Good morning, folks. This is Mr. Dan coming to you from the Landscape Design Classroom, and today I'm going to talk to you about choosing perennial growing methods. So what's the main idea here? How can I decide between a field-grown and or container-grown production methods for raising perennials? So if you take a look at the two pictures on the right, you have field-grown perennials or on the top right, and then on the bottom right, you have what looks to be growing in pots or containers. Those are also geraniums. So let's take a look at field growing first. So field growing perennials, historically, perennials have been field grown. Young plants are planted in weed-free prepared beds. Beds are usually raised 6 to 12 inches for better drainage and to prevent disease, because if you have them laying on the ground, it's easier for diseases to creep up into those beds. So having them a little bit higher will definitely make them more disease resistant. The sandy loam is ideal. So when we talk about a sandy loam, we definitely want some light, airy soil to put your plants in to start your seeds from, because those roots will break through a lot more easily. So a little bit more on field grown beds, often 3.5 feet wide, separated by a 2-foot pass to allow easy access. Irrigated during the growing season if necessary. So if you have irrigation going through, you can do that in a few different ways. You can do that through pipes going through the ground with sprayers coming up, or you could also lay your hoses out on the ground to spray over top of your plants. Personally, I like to already have everything installed for being able to easily take out your plants at the end for propagation purposes. And plants are sold as bare root for this method. So, field growing pros and cons. Some advantages here is less costly than container growing and is used to increase perennials for fall root division. The disadvantages is it's a limited harvest time. So possible weather delays and expense, and may exhibit more transplant shock and it take longer to establish in the landscape. So what they're talking about with limited harvest time here is if your plants are hit by any sort of different weather than normal, then there's a good chance that they may die off from that or not have as strong of a look. So just like any other industry, you want your product to look the best whenever it's going out to the stores, because you want people to continue to buy your product over time. So growers may combine several growing methods to get the most out of their available land, greenhouses, labor, equipment, and capital. So every single business is different in how they're going to market their materials, how they're going to grow their materials. So it's really up to you to figure out how you want to do that. So moving into container growing. Plants grown and sold in pots, as you can see in the picture here on the right, can be sold throughout the growing season. Most common method for herbaceous perennials, and can be started from seeds, rooted cuttings, root divisions, or tissue culture. So, container growing pros and cons. The advantages here are they establish quicker in the landscape, can be started from seed, rooted cuttings, root division, or tissue culture. So disadvantages here is higher cost of production per plant, and it requires close water monitoring. So just to touch on that for a second, the best way to water these is through a irrigation system in the greenhouse. Typically, drip water systems tend to work the best, but just like anything else, make sure you research the method before going into installation, because some plants need different things compared to others. So seed grown in containers. Planted in plugs, then transplanted for overwintering in an unheated greenhouse. You want to make sure that seeds stay dormant, as it's suggesting here, because once seeds are active, wet and growing, that seed is more likely to die than to come back in the spring. So, cold treatment, fertilization for flower development. Some other options for seedlings, specialty growers offering plug-rooted, pre-cold treated seedlings. Seeds started in early spring and potted in the late summer to overwinter in cold frames or unheated high tunnels. So what's a cold frame? It's a four-sided frame made of boards with a removable transparent top. They're used to protect seedlings or plants. And if you take a look at the picture below, it shows a cold frame being constructed from wooden sides, hinges, and an old window. So you can make cold frames out of a lot of different materials. You definitely want to have some sunlight access because plants need that sunlight to live. And if you have double pane glass, that works extremely well in the winter because it costs a lot to heat a greenhouse under normal circumstances. So a high tunnel, also called a hoop house, is a rigid framework covered with polyethylene film and protects from rain, wind, cold, or heat. At our home nursery, we used these for years. We would just put a piece of plastic over the top, take it down in the spring for maximum sun exposure once the frost for the year had subsided. So rooted cuttings grown in containers, taken from a stalk or parent plant, a piece of stem or other plant part, dipped in a rooting hormone. And you guys probably can't see it too well on the screen, but we do have some Clone-X rooting gel that works particularly well, but there are different types of rooting gels that you can get. Stuck in a growing medium, typically you want to do that in the potting soil and make sure it's something really rich, something that has some density to it, because you want to make sure your plant stock stays upright. So one of the common mistakes is people would just use a Pro Mix or something really light and airy, and that's not going to hold your plant over time. So, a little bit more on this. Place in a shady greenhouse with overhead mist. The reason you want mist is because when those new plants that have just been cut, they kind of act more like a succulent at first, and then once their roots take off, then you can start more of that in-ground watering. So you want those temperatures to be about 70 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and 60 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Roots typically take 2 to 4 weeks, but you have to keep up on this. I would probably check every day, if not twice a day, on these plants because this is your bread you're making here. So cold treatment for 8 to 12 weeks before transplanting to larger pots. And some more options for rooted cuttings. Pre-cold treated rooted cuttings from specialty growers. You can buy directly from a specialty grower for your own stock. It is pretty expensive though, so I would try to do your own thing if possible. Other methods such as outdoor cold frames or polytunnels. And then moving into root divisions grown in containers. The source for this is stock plants, usually 1 to 3 years old. As you can see from the picture here on the right, these are relatively mature looking plants that are being repotted and worked with, harvested in the fall, soil and top growth removed, and roots held in moist cold storage until divided. So you want to make sure if you have plants that have been growing all year, once they go dormant, you keep those cold because once they become active again, they're going to want more water and nutrients compared to not really needing anything at all once they are dormant. So a little more on root divisions. Root masses are usually divided in late winter. Specialty growers can also provide root divisions. And just talking about being divided in late winter, that's about the time whenever they start coming out of dormancy. So if you're coming out of dormancy, that's the perfect time to split these. And you'll just go right into growing in your pots. So you can use various pot sizes. Anytime I ever talk about anything container or pot grown, try to put that in the pot that it's going to live most of its life in before being planted somewhere. Because every time you remove a plant from a pot to another one to repot it and put new soil in, it shocks that root system and makes it harder to grow and stunts its growth. So roots covered with 1/2 inch to 1 inch growing media, potted roots grown in the greenhouse. So you want it to be about 60 to 70 degrees during the day and 40 to 50 degrees at night. And these are typically ready to sell within 4 to 7 weeks. So Some more alternatives: early fall harvest of stock plants, immediate division and repotting, outdoor overwintering in pots. Soil mixes are different for overwintering outdoors as compared to overwintering in a greenhouse. And many methods or combinations. And then, as with anything else, this requires good record keeping. So any part of your business, whether it is financials, whether it is your plant stock, you want to keep record of everything because that keeps your business running smooth. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please give a call down in the Landscape Design Classroom or contact me on Canvas. But have a great day. Thank you, folks.